Hello, welcome to my fourth audio commentary track. Today I'm going to be talking a bit about Hallow Hill, which I have grappled with the idea of putting together an audio commentary track for the film, but that's why I did mention it very briefly when I was talking about Pyramid. I kind of summarised the first 2 minutes of that video before I then went on to talk about Pyramid, just because I felt like there wouldn't be enough to really discuss. As I mentioned before, this film wasn't scripted. Originally, the film was going to be called Wolf at the Door, and it was going to feature two actors, not just Daryl Bradford, who is the actor here in this film, but it was also going to feature the actor I used before from The Grove, Robbie Taylor. And the premise was basically going to be Robbie's in a house, and then Daryl arrives at the door and basically terrorizes him. And I took a lot of those ideas and used them in the script for Pyramid. So there's a lot of similarities between Pyramid and the original script for Wolf at the Door. But as it stood, when I was filming it, we had a very short amount of time, and it was more the case that I really wanted to put something together. I had a week off, and so did Daryl, and so I used that week to basically film. Well, it might have been 8 days actually. So I filmed the whole of Hallow Hill in one day and then spent a week editing. So by the time I got back to work, the entire film was basically finished. So it was more the fact that I just wanted to keep busy, and I love filming in outdoor locations in the woods and in any sort of rural landscape. It's just part of the fun, really, is the process of putting a film together, not so much the end result. And I think that definitely shines through. As the title states, it is an experimental film, so it was less concerned with putting together a comprehensive story, which I hope Wolf at the Door would have been, and more concerned with just having fun, getting out there, filming a bunch of random scenes, and then hoping that at some point in the process I'd be able to find a way to connect scenes that I'd already filmed. And then by the end of the day, basically, because I filmed it in one day, so by the end of the day, or towards the end of the day, I would have ideas about how to put the film together, and I would have a story in my head of what the film is. And so thankfully that's what ended up happening. I will talk a bit later about a film that really influenced Hallow Hill, but that opening scene where Daryl is sort of walking from the distance at the end of the trail towards the camera in a very funny way, basically, because it is. I do view this as more of a comedy than a horror film, and I'm not saying that because the film failed to scare people based on the reactions that I've had. It's not like the Tommy Wiseau case of you plan to make a serious drama, and then after everybody laughs at it, you say, no, well, it was a comedy, that was the plan the whole time. I'm quite open about the fact that I was definitely planning to make a comedy horror, and if there's more comedy than horror, then so be it. But that's a case in point, really, of him walking towards the camera like that in a stupid way. It was for comedic effect. At one point, I was at the top of the field. I went back to Daryl after he'd filmed the shot of me running across. I went back to him and the camera wouldn't turn on. I was testing the footage and it just wouldn't come on, and I was worried then that the entire project would have to be scrapped. So, it's just a stroke of luck, really, that from then on out, for the rest of the filming, because it was filmed in just one day, I had no issues. So clearly it was meant to be, I suppose you could say. With Daryl's character is interesting to me. I mean, I didn't really have any conception of who he would be, just simply because it was kind of last minute, and I was thinking, how crazy could I make this character? What could I have him do in the environment that we're in? We haven't got any props to work with, we haven't got a lot of resources, and we're working on a no budget as well. So it was all about how could I make Daryl appear as crazy as possible, while also trying to give him a little bit of depth. And in order to do that, I thought, well, Daryl's already learnt a lot of the lines from Wolf at the Door, which is meant to go ahead. So this conversation where he's by the tree is the conversation that he was having in Wolf at the Door at some point in the story, and that's why he ends up mentioning the house and the street, even though there is no sign of a house and street, where he's in a completely different he's in a rural landscape, and there's been no sightings of a house or a street. And so what he's saying is kind of, it didn't seem completely out of context, because everything else he's saying is nonsensical anyway. And the interpretation from that is, well, the audience will just think he's even more insane, and that's the angle I was going for anyway. So I thought that I don't really need to change the dialogue. At least if he has some lines and he has some material to actually sink his teeth into, then I just figured it would help the character in all his other mannerisms and the way he acts and everything else. I think if he actually had a scene where he actually gets to talk and actually think while he's talking, that will help his character kind of pull inward, and that he can get a sense in his head of who he is, and that would help him project outwardly in all of the other crazier scenes where he's kind of running around and screaming. And that was the plan anyway, and I do think it all comes together quite well.
Do you know what I did to them? Do you know what I did? I killed every last one of them. Yeah.
So this scene here, I'm running away from him now, and I've reused this shot here when I'm running across the shrubs and stuff like that. And this wasn't filmed close to the bridge where I'm going to end up just now, walking across the mud, and then I end up at the bridge where I came over. The locations were varied. I mean, there wasn't a straight path from scene 1 to scene 5. I mean, we were filming in different parts of the woods, and it was all about editing it together in a way that was quite seamless. So I hopefully it's not too jarring. The shot where I'm kind of running with the camera and it's all over the place obscures the audience's understanding of where we are exactly anyway, and they were in the woods, so it all kind of looks the same. So I didn't have to worry too much about that kind of continuity. This bit here where I'm wearing the mask and kind of lean my head towards the camera, I wanted to bring the mask back into this story. It was previously used in The Grove, and I bought it specifically for that film. I ended up using it here in this one, just because Wolf at the Door wasn't intended to be any kind of sequel to The Grove, but in the end I thought, what can I do to try and create a through line from one film to the next? And then that followed through a third time with Bad Omen, which I made after this, which features the mask, and then I kind of put the three films together as a sort of loose anthology trilogy where the only thing that connects the films is the monster mask. So I really kind of made the most of well, I suppose you could say I kind of made the most out of nothing. So effectively, I've put a film together out of nothing. It's a whole bunch of scenes that many aspiring filmmakers would have looked at all of this footage and potentially just scrapped all of it, really, and not it would have been unusable, but I found a way to make it work. I don't know if you've ever seen David Lynch's Inland Empire, which I'm a big fan of, but it's quite an unorthodox approach where he would for that film just write individual scenes, go out and film those scenes, and then at some point during the process he started to see the connective tissue that joined the scenes together. Then he thought of the overall storyline, and then filmed extra scenes to connect, scene 1 and 2. Scene 3 then connects to that, and then it runs more seamlessly into, well, it's still a surrealist film. It's not that easy to understand, but into something that's hopefully a bit more comprehensible than it was without, say, that third scene, with 1 and 2 standing by themselves. Without the third scene, the first two would be completely independent from one another. Daryl is kind of looking lost, and he's holding the camera underneath his chin. That's probably my favourite series of shots in the film. I think that's quite I just quite like the shots where you'd have something right up close in the foreground, and then you'd have stuff in the background. I think it creates that sense of depth, which I just really like this final sequence. He's throwing his arms up in the air with the mask on. It's all pretty crazy stuff, and when he's looking down at the camera, that's a continuation of the shot from before, which was a bit more subtle. So that's just a crazier take of the first one, which I ended up using in this ending. And finally, he's looking at the camera, screaming. I had to try not to laugh while he was doing that because it might have been a distraction. I was kind of clenching my cheek, but yeah, it was all about putting together a crazy ending, really. Having the silence after the scream and then cut to credits with a piece of music that I've already used in the film to suggest to the audience that it was this grand plan the whole time, that I had the whole thing planned out, when I'm quite comfortable, as I'm telling you right now, that it wasn't planned for the most part. It was a case very much as I described with Inland Empire. I had the same approach. I had a whole bunch of scenes filmed at first, and then I kind of found a way to connect them later on, and then filmed additional content to join them together, which is why some of them seem quite random, and then others seem like they are connected. And so, yeah, just to kind of summarize, really, I am very pleased with the way that the film turned out. Could have very easily been a failed experiment. So if you did want to check out the latest short film I've done, it's called The Fever Dream, and you can find that on my films page, or just go to the video section and you'll see it. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed listening, and I will see you next time.